I'm a mortgage broker. My job is to get people into mortgages. So when I tell you that renting is sometimes the smarter financial move, I need you to understand that I mean it. The rent versus buy debate in New York City is not a simple answer. Anyone who tells you that is either selling you something or hasn't done the math. So today I did the math. Real numbers, real New York City prices, real mortgage rates as of right now. And I'm going to show you exactly when buying wins, when renting wins, and what the variables are that almost no one talks about. Because the goal isn't just to sell you a mortgage, the goal is to help you make the right decision for your actual life. I'm Nicole Hamilton. I'm a mortgage broker, a financial technology founder, and the author of the book, Avoid the Money Pit. Let's run the numbers. Let's start with renting. The median rent in Manhattan right now is just under $5,000 a month. In Brooklyn, you're looking at around $4,000. Across all of New York City, the average is around $4,000 for a one-bedroom apartment. And here's the part people don't think about. That number went up 9% in Manhattan last year alone, 9%. If your rent is $4,000 today and it goes up 5% per year, which is actually lower than recent history, in 5 years you're paying $5,100 a month, and in 10 years you're paying $6,500 a month. And at the end of those 10 years, you have nothing. No equity, no asset, not $1 of that $600,000 that you paid in rent comes back to you. That is not an argument against renting. Sometimes renting is right. But that is a fact that needs to be in the room when you're making this decision. Now let's look at buying. I'm going to use $1 million home because in New York, that's not a luxury purchase. That's an entry-level 1 to 2 bedroom apartment in a desirable neighborhood. Here's what the numbers look like right now. 10% down, that's $100,000. Your loan would be $900,000. At today's rate, right now around 6.5% on a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, your principal and interest payment is around $5,700 a month. Add property taxes. For a condo in New York City, average property taxes run about $15,000 a year. That's $1,200 a month. Add building common charges and maintenance. Let's call it $1,000 a month for a mid-range building. All in, you're looking at roughly $8,000 a month in total housing costs versus $4,000 to $5,000 a month to rent a comparable place. On a pure monthly cash flow basis, right now, today, renting is cheaper. But stopping there would be leaving out the most important part of the equation, the leverage argument. Why the monthly comparison misses the point. Here's what changes everything. When you buy that $1 million apartment, you put $100,000 down, but you don't get appreciation on $100,000. You get appreciation on $1 million. That's leverage. And in New York City, where real estate has been appreciating at an average of 4 to 6% a year historically, this is where the math completely flips. Let me make this concrete. You buy $1 million apartment today. Conservative scenario, it appreciates 4% a year. In 5 years, that apartment is worth over $1.2 million. That's $217,000 in appreciation. On top of that, 5 years of mortgage payments have been paid down, roughly $65,000 in principal. So after 5 years, your net gain, appreciation plus equity, is somewhere around $280,000. Your total out of pocket over those 5 years, the difference between your mortgage costs and what you would have paid in rent is roughly $180,000, which means buying still comes out ahead by about $100,000, even when renting was $3,000 a month cheaper. And that's the conservative scenario. If the appreciation is closer to 6%, which it has been historically, that gap gets much wider, much faster. This is why I said earlier that stopping at the monthly payment misses the point. You're not comparing $8,000 a month to $4,500 a month. You're comparing building $280,000 in wealth to building zero. Renting is the smarter financial move when your time horizon is short. Real estate is not a liquid investment. When you buy in New York City, closing costs alone run 2 to 4% of the purchase price. On $1 million home, that's $20,000 to $40,000 in costs you pay up front. Transfer taxes, attorney fees, title insurance, bank fees, except if you're buying a co-op where the closing costs are much less. When you sell, you pay a broker commission. And in New York State, you have a transfer tax on the seller too. If you're buying and you might need to sell in 2 years or less, the math often doesn't work. You need enough time for appreciation and equity to overcome those transaction costs. Generally speaking, the 5-year rule holds in New York City. If you can commit to 5 years, buying starts to make financial sense in most scenarios. Under 2 years, rent. 2 to 5 years, it depends on your specific numbers. Over 5 years, the case for buying is especially compelling. Renting also makes sense when you don't have the right down payment yet, and stretching would leave you financially exposed. A home purchase you can't sustain is worse than renting every time. There's one more variable in this equation that almost never comes up. Your rent can go up, but your mortgage payment cannot if you're in a 30-year fixed or a 15-year fixed. A 30-year fixed rate mortgage locks in your principal and interest payment on day one. That number does not move for 30 years. Your landlord can raise your rent every single lease renewal. And in New York, historically they do. So in year one, the renter is paying $4,500 and the buyer is paying $8,000. In year 10, if rents go up 5% a year, the renter is paying $7,300 a month and the buyer is still paying the same $5,700 in principal and interest that they started with. The gap closes and eventually it crosses. That is the variable that changes the entire long-term picture, and it almost never appears in a rent versus buy calculation. So here's the honest answer to rent versus buy in New York City. If you're here for less than 5 years, rent. If your finances aren't stable enough, rent. But if you're planning to stay, and if your finances are solid, and if you have or can build the down payment, the math strongly favors buying, not because of the monthly payment, but because of leverage, because of locked-in costs, because of appreciation on an asset that has historically grown in value every decade since New York City existed. The people who buy, even when monthly costs are higher, often come out dramatically ahead. The people who keep waiting for the right time sometimes wait for the whole decade. If you want to run your own specific numbers, not get a general scenario, your actual rent, your actual target price, your actual down payment, I have a tool on my website that does exactly that. I'll link to it in the description. And if you want a real conversation about where you stand, the link to schedule a call with me is there too. No pressure, no pitch, just someone who will tell you what the numbers actually say for your situation. I'm Nicole Hamilton. Subscribe if you want more of this kind of content. Real math, real New York City numbers, and no spin. I'll see you in the next one.